The blood was still warm on Catalina's hands when the child spoke her first word. Not to the Lycan King who stood frozen in the doorway. Not to the dozens of nobles who had gathered for the birth ceremony. But to her. The broken wolf, the cursed healer, the woman who wasn't supposed to exist in this room at all. Mama. That single word shattered everything. If you're loving this story, tap that like button right now and tell me the city you're watching from so I can send you a hug. And stay until the very end, because what happens when the Lycan King discovers the truth about Catalina's wolf will leave you speechless. Catalina's wolf had been broken since birth. Not weak, not dormant, broken. Shattered into fragments that existed somewhere between the physical and spiritual realm, unable to fully manifest, unable to fully heal, unable to do what every other wolf in the kingdom of Valdez could do naturally. The pack healers had tried everything when she was young. Ancient rituals beneath the blood moon. Immersion in the sacred springs of the northern territories. Even the painful bone-binding ceremonies that left her screaming for 3 days straight while they attempted to force her wolf into existence. Nothing worked. Her wolf remained fractured, present enough that she could sense it, feel its anguish, hear its broken howls in her mind during the full moon, but never whole enough to shift, never complete enough to bond, never strong enough to do anything except remind her of what she could never have. In a society where your wolf determined your worth, where the strength of your beast defined your place in the hierarchy, where even the lowest omega had more value than someone whose wolf existed only in shattered pieces, Catalina had no place at all. She was called ghost-touched, cursed, an abomination that should have been cast out at birth according to the old laws. Only her mother's position as a minor healer in the outer courts had kept her alive. Hidden away in the servants' quarters, forbidden from attending pack gatherings, barred from the ceremonies that marked the passage from childhood to adulthood. Catalina learned to make herself invisible. She discovered that if she kept her head down, if she never looked the true wolves in the eye, if she performed her duties as a servant without complaint, most of them would forget she existed at all. And that was safer than being remembered. But invisibility only worked until it didn't. The night the Luna Queen went into labor 3 months too early, with the royal physicians away at the northern summit and the backup healers struck down by a mysterious illness that left them unconscious in their chambers, someone remembered that old Beatrice's daughter had steady hands and knew the healing herbs better than anyone in the castle. They dragged Catalina from the laundry rooms where she'd been working the night shift. She still had soap suds on her arms when they thrust her into the royal birthing chamber, where Luna Queen Jimena was hemorrhaging on the silk sheets, her screams echoing off the ancient stone walls. "Save them or die," the king's guard captain had said. His hand on the hilt of his silver blade. Not a threat. Promise. Catalina's broken wolf howled in terror inside her mind, the sound like glass grinding against glass, painful and useless. But her human hands, those were steady. Her human mind, that remembered every lesson her mother had taught her before the fever took her 5 winters ago. She worked through the night while nobles pressed against the doorway, their perfect wolves sensing the weakness in the room, their whispers cutting deeper than any blade. The broken one. The cursed servant. This is what happens when we show mercy to abominations. Luna Queen Jimena's wolf was trying to heal her, but the trauma was too severe, the blood loss too great. The baby, a tiny female pup with silver-white fur already showing in the birth call, was dying. Her heartbeat fading with every passing second. Catalina's hands moved on instinct. Herbs her mother had taught her about. Pressure points the old texts described. And something else. Something that rose from the shattered pieces of her broken wolf. A desperate energy that felt like grasping at moonlight with bleeding fingers. She didn't know what she was doing. She only knew that this child could not die. Not like this. Not when Catalina could feel the strength of her wolf even through the birth membranes, could sense the power that would one day make her magnificent. The energy that poured from Catalina's hands into the dying pup felt like her wolf was tearing itself into even smaller pieces, sacrificing fragments of its already broken existence to kindle the spark of life in this royal child. Felt like dying. Felt like burning. It felt like the only right thing she'd ever done. The baby's heart steadied. Her tiny chest began to rise and fall with stronger breaths. And Luna Queen Jimena's bleeding slowed, then stopped, her wolf finally able to do what it had been trying to do all along. Catalina collapsed against the bed frame, her hands shaking, her broken wolf howling in agony, and no one noticed. They were too busy celebrating. Too busy calling for the Lycan King to announce the birth of his daughter. That should have been the end of Catalina's involvement. She should have been dismissed back to the laundry rooms, forgotten again, invisible again, safe again. But the baby wouldn't let her go. Every time Catalina tried to step back, tried to fade into the shadows as she'd been trained to do, the newborn pup would begin to scream. Not the ordinary cries of a newborn, but the deeper howl of a wolf in distress, a sound that rattled the windows and made every wolf in the castle snap to attention. And she would only quiet when Catalina held her. "It's the blood bond," old Sebastian the court historian had whispered, his ancient eyes wide with something between wonder and horror. The child's wolf recognizes her as pack, as kin. That word kin sent shockwaves through the court. Broken wolves couldn't form bonds. Everyone knew that. It was impossible as Catalina's existence itself. But the baby didn't care about impossibilities. They named her Esperanza. Oh, a cruel irony, Catalina thought, that a child of such promise would be bound to someone so broken. The Lycan King, Alfonso de Valdez, sixth of his name, ruler of the 7 territories, whose wolf was said to be the size of a warhorse and twice as deadly, stood at the threshold of the birthing chamber and watched his daughter reach for the servant girl with the broken wolf. His eyes were the color of amber in firelight, ancient and knowing, and when they fixed on Catalina, she felt like every secret she'd ever kept was laid bare. "You will remain," he said, and it was not a request. That was 3 months ago. 90 days of living in the royal wing. 90 days of nobles whispering as she walked past. 90 days of Esperanza's wet nurse trying to feed her, only for the pup to reject the milk and scream until Catalina held her, until Catalina sang the old lullabies in the forgotten dialect her mother had taught her, until Catalina's broken wolf sent out those strange fractured pulses of energy that somehow soothed the most powerful infant in the kingdom. 90 days of the Lycan King watching her with those amber eyes, saying nothing, revealing nothing, while the court buzzed with speculation and resentment. And then came the naming ceremony. In the kingdom of Valdez, a royal pup's formal naming happened at 3 months, when their wolf was strong enough to be presented to the moon and the pack. It was ancient tradition, sacred. The moment when the child was formally acknowledged as heir, when her wolf was witnessed by all, when her place in the hierarchy was established beyond question. The great hall was filled to capacity. Every noble family in the 7 territories had sent representatives. The Luna Queen, recovered from the birth but still weak, sat on her throne in silver and white. The Lycan King stood beside her in the black and crimson of the royal line. His presence so commanding that even the most dominant alphas in the room kept their distance. Catalina was supposed to hand the baby to the Luna Queen for the ceremony, then retreat to the shadows. Invisible again. That was the plan. But when she tried to pass Esperanza to her mother, the baby's tiny hands fisted in Catalina's servant's tunic. Her silver blue eyes, wolf eyes already showing the beast within, locked onto Catalina's face. And she spoke. Pups didn't speak this early. Not human words. Their wolves were too dominant, their animal nature too strong. Most royal children didn't speak until they were past their first year, their human consciousness still developing behind the power of their beast. But Esperanza looked at Catalina, looked at her with eyes that seemed to hold an ancient wisdom and said, "Mama." The great hall went silent. It was the kind of silence that preceded avalanches. The kind that came before wars. Luna Queen Jimena's face went white, then red. Her wolf flashed behind her eyes, a beautiful silver creature with rage in its gaze. "That creature is not your mother," she hissed, but she was speaking to her daughter, not to the court, and her voice cracked on the last word. Esperanza said it again, louder. "Mama." Her tiny hand patted Catalina's cheek, and her wolf pulsed with joy, with recognition, with a certainty that could not be reasoned with. Catalina wanted to die. Wanted the stone floor to open up and swallow her. Wanted to explain that she'd never encouraged this, never sought this, never wanted anything except to survive. But before she could speak, before she could apologize, before she could beg for mercy, the Lycan King laughed. It was not a cruel laugh, not mocking. It was the sound of genuine amusement mixed with something darker, something that made every dominant wolf in the room tense with uncertainty. "It seems," Alfonso said, his voice carrying effortlessly through the hall, "that my daughter has chosen her caretaker." He descended from the dais, each step deliberate, each movement radiating power. When he reached Catalina, she was trembling so hard she could barely hold Esperanza. He looked down at her, this king whose wolf could crush her with a single bite, whose word was law across 7 territories, whose displeasure meant death. "Do you accept this bond?" he asked. It was a trap. Had to be. If she said yes, Luna Queen Jimena would have her killed for presuming above her station. If she said no, she would be rejecting a royal pup's claim, which was its own death sentence. But Esperanza's hand was still on her cheek. And her broken wolf, fractured and useless as it was howling with something that felt almost like completeness for the first time in Catalina's entire life. Her voice failed. She tried again. "I accept, your majesty, if it pleases you. I will care for the princess with my life." "Then you will be her second mother," the Lycan King declared. "From this day forward, Catalina de..." He paused. "You have no pack name." "No, your majesty." "Then you will take mine. Catalina de Valdez. Second mother to the heir. Bound by blood and recognized by the crown." The hall erupted. Nobles shouted in outrage. The Luna Queen stood so fast her throne toppled backward. The king's guard drew their weapons, uncertain who the threat was, uncertain whether their king had gone mad. But Alfonso simply raised one hand, and his wolf rose with it. A massive spectral presence that manifested above him like a second shadow, all teeth and amber eyes and absolute dominance. Every wolf in the hall submitted instantly, dropping to their knees, baring their throats, unable to do anything else in the face of that primal command. "The bond is witnessed," Alfonso said quietly. "The bond is sealed. Anyone who challenges it challenges the crown." And that was how Catalina, the broken one, the cursed one, the girl who wasn't supposed to exist, became part of the most powerful family in the kingdom. But power came with a price. It always did. The assassination attempts started within a week. The first was poison in her evening meal. Catalina's broken wolf sensed it somehow, that fractured instinct flaring with warning just before she lifted the spoon to her lips. She dumped the soup in the chamber pot, and the king's poison taster confirmed the next morning that it contained enough wolfsbane to kill 3 grown alphas. The second was a hired blade who slipped into her chambers at midnight. Catalina woke to cold steel at her throat and the scent of silver that burned her broken wolf's senses even in its fractured state. She would have died, should have died, except Esperanza woke screaming in her cradle, and the sound brought the king's guard running. They found the assassin dead on the floor, his throat torn out by claws that didn't belong to any guard. The Lycan King stood in Catalina's doorway, his hand still transformed into talons, blood dripping onto the ancient stones. He looked at her for a long moment, his amber eyes unreadable. "You should have let me assign you guards," he said. "I didn't think." "No, you didn't." He cleaned his claws on the dead assassin's cloak. "That changes now. You will have a full security detail. You will not go anywhere alone. You will not eat anything that hasn't been tested. You will not." "Why?" The word burst from Catalina before she could stop it. "Why do all this for someone like me? Nothing. I'm broken. Let them have me, and this all stops." Alfonso crossed the room in 3 strides. He moved like violence given form, like death wrapped in skin, and Catalina's broken wolf screamed at her to submit, to look away, to show throat. But he didn't touch her, didn't hurt her. He just looked at her with those ancient eyes and said, "Do you know what my wolf sensed the night you saved my daughter?" Catalina shook her head. "Power." The word hung in the air between them. Not the power of a strong wolf. Not dominance or physical strength. Something else. Something I've only encountered once before, in texts so old they predate the kingdom itself. He glanced at Esperanza, who had quieted now, watching them both with those two wise silver-blue eyes. My daughter's wolf recognized you because your wolf is something our kind hasn't seen in 1,000 years. You're not broken, Catalina. You're unfinished. I don't understand. Neither do I. Not yet. He moved toward the door, then paused. But I will. And until I do, you will be protected. Not because of mercy. Not because of kindness. But because whatever you are, whatever you're becoming, my daughter needs you. And what my daughter needs, she gets. The third attempt came a month later during the Harvest Festival. Someone had paid a rogue pack from the borderlands to start a riot, to create chaos, to use the confusion to get to Catalina while she watched the festivities from the royal balcony with Esperanza in her arms. They almost succeeded. The rogues crashed through the festival grounds in their wolf forms, their eyes red with bloodlust and the combat drugs that made them immune to pain. They tore through the king's guard like paper, heading straight for the royal balcony with single-minded purpose. Catalina ran. Not away, there was nowhere to go. She ran deeper into the castle, Esperanza clutched to her chest, her broken wolf howling directions that made no sense, leading her down corridors she'd never seen, through passages that shouldn't exist. She ended up in the old archive, the one that was supposed to be sealed, in a circular chamber with symbols carved into every surface. And there, cornered, with the rogue's howls echoing closer, Catalina did the only thing she could think of. She called to her broken wolf. Not to shift. She knew that was impossible. Not to fight. Her wolf had no teeth, no claws, no physical form to manifest. But to do what it had done the night Esperanza was born. To reach into that place between the physical and spiritual, to grasp at something that existed in the fragments. Energy exploded from Catalina's body. Not heat. Not light. Something that felt like moonlight made solid, like starlight given purpose. It poured out of her in waves, and where it touched the carved symbols on the walls, they blazed with silver fire. The rogues burst through the archive door and immediately began to scream. Their wolves were being torn from their bodies. Not killed. Separated. Catalina could see the spectral forms of their beasts being pulled out of their physical forms by the energy she couldn't control, couldn't understand, couldn't stop. The rogues collapsed, writhing, their eyes rolling back in their heads as they experienced what Catalina had lived with her entire life. The agony of a wolf that couldn't fully exist, the torture of being split between two states of being. Then the Lycan King was there. His wolf fully manifested, massive and terrible. He took in the scene with a single glance, the rogues convulsing on the floor, the symbols burning on the walls. Catalina collapsed in the center of it all with Esperanza somehow unaffected and calm in her arms. "Sebastian," Alfonso commanded, and the old historian appeared as if he'd been waiting. "Tell me what I'm seeing." The old wolf approached carefully, his eyes scanning the symbols. "These are marks of the primordial pack, Your Majesty. The first wolves before we separated into the modern pack structure. And this chamber, this is one of their binding circles. It's been sealed for 10 centuries because..." He paused, his voice dropping to a whisper. "Because it was designed to hold the Void Walkers. Speak plainly. The legends say that before wolves became what we are now, there were some whose beasts existed partially in another realm. They could walk between the physical world and the spirit plane. They could separate a wolf from its human host, could heal broken bonds, could even transfer pack connections from one wolf to another. They were the most powerful of our kind and the most dangerous. When they died out, we sealed their temples and tried to forget." Alfonso looked at Catalina, who was struggling to breathe, her broken wolf's howling finally fading to silence. "You're saying she's a Void Walker?" "I'm saying her wolf isn't broken, Your Majesty. It's exactly what it was always meant to be. Split between worlds. And if the old texts are true..." Sebastian's hands trembled as he touched one of the glowing symbols. "If she ever learns to control this power, she won't just be able to walk between realms. She'll be able to reshape the very nature of what we are. The implications of that statement hung in the air like a blade waiting to fall. If Catalina could separate wolves from their humans, she could destroy the pack hierarchy with a thought. If she could heal broken bonds, she could end the suffering of wolves who'd lost their mates, something previously thought impossible. If she could transfer pack connections, she could unmake alphas, create new pack lines, rewrite the very foundation of their society. She would be the most powerful being in the kingdom, or the most dangerous threat. "We keep this secret," Alfonso said after a long moment. "No one speaks of what happened here. The rogues were killed by my guard in the festival riot. This archive remains sealed. And you?" He crouched beside Catalina, his amber eyes searching hers. "You will train. You will learn to control what you are. And you will never ever use this power without my permission. Understood?" Catalina nodded, unable to speak. "Good. Because if the other territories learn what you can do, they will either try to capture you or kill you. And I would rather burn the entire kingdom to ash than let either of those things happen to my daughter's second mother." The training started the next day. Sebastian brought ancient texts that crumbled at the touch, written in dialects so old that even he struggled to translate them. The Void Walkers had left instructions, rituals, warnings carved in blood and silver on pages that seemed to shift when you weren't looking directly at them. Catalina learned that her wolf wasn't broken. It was distributed. Parts of it existed in the physical realm, parts in the spirit plane, and parts in something the ancient texts called the void, the space between spaces, where pack bonds and wolf consciousness originated. She learned that she could sense these bonds, could see them like silver threads connecting every wolf in the castle to their pack, to their family, to their mates. Some threads were strong and bright. Others were frayed and fading. And some, like the thread connecting her to Esperanza, blazed like sunlight, impossible to ignore. She learned that touching these threads was dangerous. That pulling on them incorrectly could sever bonds that were meant to be eternal. That pushing energy into them could strengthen connections, but too much would burn the bond away entirely. She learned by making mistakes. By accidentally severing the pack bond of a servant wolf who'd been disrespectful, watching in horror as the woman collapsed, suddenly alone in her mind for the first time in her life. By trying to heal an elderly Omega's connection to his dying mate, and nearly killing them both when she pushed too hard. By reaching for her own thread, the one that connected her to Esperanza, and feeling the power that slept there, the potential that terrified her. And she learned that she was being watched. Luna Queen Jimena's hatred was no secret. She made it clear in every interaction, every cold stare, every word that dripped with venom disguised as propriety. But she was careful, too careful. She never directly threatened Catalina, never gave the Lycan King grounds to act against her. But Catalina could see the threads. Could see that Jimena's bond to the pack was strong. Her bond to Alfonso was complicated and strained, and her bond to Esperanza was wrong. Not absent, not weak, but twisted somehow, like a rope that had been tied in knots and pulled too tight. A mother should have a natural bond to her child. It should flow like water, easy and unbreakable. But Jimena's thread to Esperanza felt forced, manufactured, as if it had been created rather than born. Catalina mentioned it to Sebastian during one of their training sessions. The old historian went pale. "You can see that," he whispered. "What does it mean?" He was quiet for a long time. Then carefully he said, "Sometimes when a birth is difficult, when a mother or child nearly dies, the natural bond doesn't form correctly. Can be repaired with the right rituals. But those rituals require blood magic, and they're forbidden because they create bonds that are based on obligation rather than love. Bonds that can be manipulated. You think someone manipulated the Luna Queen's bond to Esperanza? I think you should be very, very careful, child. Because if what you're seeing is true, it means someone had access to the Luna Queen during or immediately after the birth. Someone who knew forbidden magic. Someone who wanted to control the air through her mother." He gripped Catalina's shoulders. "And if they discover that you can see their work, they will kill you to protect their secret. That night, Catalina couldn't sleep. She lay in her chambers with Esperanza's cradle beside her bed, listening to the baby's soft breathing, trying to understand what she'd stumbled into. A knock at the door made her jump. "Come in," she called, expecting one of her guards. The Lycan King entered instead. He'd never come to her chambers alone before. Always there had been guards, advisors, Sebastian, someone else present to maintain propriety. But now it was just him, and the way he looked at her made Catalina's broken wolf stir uneasily. "You've been asking questions about pack bonds," Alfonso said, closing the door behind him. "I was just training, Your Majesty. Sebastian was teaching me." "I know what Sebastian was teaching you. I also know what you saw when you looked at my mate's connection to my daughter." He moved to Esperanza's cradle, looking down at his sleeping pup with an expression that Catalina couldn't read. "What you stumbled upon is the reason I allowed you to live when you should have been cast out as a child. The reason I've protected you despite the court's outrage. The reason I need you to become everything the ancient texts say you can be." Catalina's mouth went dry. "I don't understand. My mate's bond to Esperanza was manufactured. But not during the birth, it was done before. Before Esperanza was even conceived." He looked up at Catalina, and his amber eyes were full of a rage that was barely controlled. "Jimena is not Esperanza's mother." The world tilted. The real Luna Queen died 18 months ago, poisoned at a diplomatic summit in the Eastern Territories. The woman who sleeps in the royal chambers, who sits on the throne, who the entire kingdom believes is my mate. She's a changeling. A wolf trained in blood magic to take another's form, another's memories, another's place. But the pack bonds, you would have known. I knew something was wrong. But changeling magic is ancient and powerful. It mimics bonds well enough to fool most wolves, even an alpha king. But not well enough to create a natural connection to a child who was conceived after the changeling took Jimena's place. His hands gripped the edge of the cradle. When Esperanza was born early, when the healers were mysteriously struck down, when you were forced into that birthing chamber, it wasn't coincidence. Someone wanted a witness to the failed bond. Someone wanted evidence that could be used against me. Who? That's what I need you to discover. You can see bonds. You can touch them. You might be able to trace them back to their source, find out who created the changeling, who ordered my true mate's death, who's been controlling the false Luna Queen for the past year and a half. He moved closer to Catalina. I need you to find them before they discover that you can see their magic, before they kill you to silence you, before they move against Esperanza. Why don't you just expose the changeling now? If you know. Because whoever did this has allies in every territory. Because exposing the changeling without proof would start a civil war. Because Esperanza is only 3 months old, and in a war, the heir is always the first target. His voice dropped. And because the changeling is pregnant. Catalina felt like she'd been struck. Pregnant. But with a child that would be second in line to the throne. A child who would be conceived of blood magic and changeling power. A child who could be controlled by whoever created the false Luna Queen. Alfonso's wolf flashed behind his eyes. I will not let that creature give birth. But I cannot kill her without evidence, without knowing who stands behind her. That's where you come in. You want me to investigate a conspiracy that reaches the highest levels of the kingdom, discover who's powerful enough to kill and replace a Luna Queen, and do all of this while learning to control powers I barely understand and staying alive despite multiple assassination attempts. Catalina's voice rose despite herself. I'm 22 years old. I was a servant in the laundry rooms 3 months ago. And now you're a void walker who holds the fate of my daughter in her hands. Alfonso's voice was not unkind, but it was absolute. I'm not asking you to do this alone. Sebastian will help. My most trusted guards will protect you. And I will give you access to every resource in the kingdom. But you must do this, Catalina. Because you're the only one who can see what I cannot. The only one whose power can unravel what blood magic has created. Catalina looked at Esperanza, sleeping peacefully, unaware of the danger surrounding her. The silver thread connecting them blazed in Catalina's vision, so bright it hurt to look at directly. "If I do this," she said slowly, "if I find proof of who's behind this, what happens to the changeling?" "She dies. Painfully. Publicly. Along with everyone who helped her. And the baby she's carrying." Alfonso's face became stone. "Is not my child. Is not my pack. Is not my problem. It's an innocent life. It's a weapon being forged to destroy my daughter." They stared at each other, and Catalina felt the weight of choice pressing down on her shoulders. Refuse, and Esperanza would remain in danger. Accept, and she would become part of a plot that would end with the execution of a pregnant woman, changeling or not. "I need one promise from you," Catalina said finally. "If I find proof, if I help you uncover this conspiracy, you let me examine the baby before you make any decisions about its fate. Let me see its bonds, determine if it's truly a magical construct, or if it's just an innocent child caught in all this. And if it's innocent, then we find another way. We don't punish children for the sins of their parents." Alfonso studied her for a long moment. Then, reluctantly, he nodded. "You have my word. As king and as alpha. Now do I have yours?" Catalina looked at Esperanza one more time. Then she met the Lycan King's amber eyes and said, "You have my word. I'll find your evidence." "Good. Because the harvest celebration in the Eastern Territories begins in 3 days. The changeling will be attending with a full delegation. And you're coming with us." The Eastern Territories were beautiful in autumn. Rolling hills covered in forests that blazed with red and gold, rivers that ran clear and cold, castles that had stood for thousands of years and still sang with the power of the ancient packs. But beauty hid danger. It always did. The delegation from Valdez was massive. 50 guards, 20 nobles, a dozen servants, and the royal family. The false Luna Queen Jimena rode in the first carriage, her hand resting on her barely visible pregnancy, her smile perfect and cold. Alfonso rode ahead on horseback, every inch the dominant Alpha King. And Catalina rode in the third carriage with Esperanza, hidden behind curtains, trying not to think about how exposed she felt outside the castle walls. Sebastian sat across from her, ancient texts spread across his lap. "The Eastern Territories have always been home to blood magic practitioners," he said quietly. "If the changeling was created, it was likely done here. We need to look for wolves with the right knowledge, the right power, and the right motivation to move against Valdez. That could be anyone. The Eastern Territories have been rivals of Valdez for centuries. Which is why we start with the obvious suspect." He pulled out a portrait from one of his texts. It showed a woman with dark hair and darker eyes, her beauty marked by a cruelty in her smile. Lady Isabella de Montemayor, one of the most powerful nobles in the East. She was engaged to Alfonso before he chose Jimena as his mate. She was not pleased with his decision. Scorned lover seeks revenge by replacing her rival with a changeling and infiltrating the kingdom. Catalina considered it. It's almost too obvious. Sometimes the obvious answer is the correct one. Sebastian tucked the portrait away. "She'll be at the celebration tonight. Watch her bonds. See if there's any connection to the false queen." The celebration was held in a great hall that made the castle at Valdez look modest by comparison. Thousands of candles illuminated stone columns carved with the histories of the ancient packs. Wolves in human form mingled with wolves in beast form, the sound of their conversations and growls creating a symphony of pack life. Catalina stayed near the edges, Esperanza in her arms, watching. The false Jimena was holding court in the center of the hall, her belly just prominent enough to draw attention. Her hand repeatedly resting on it in a gesture that seemed calculated to remind everyone of the new life she carried. Wolves approached to offer congratulations, their pack bonds visible to Catalina's sight as silver threads connecting them all in an intricate web. Then Lady Isabella arrived. She moved through the crowd like a predator, all grace and danger, wolves automatically making way for her. Her bond to her pack blazed with power. She was clearly a dominant alpha in her own right. And when she approached the false Jimena, the two women's threads touched. Not connected, not bonded, but there was something there. A shimmer of recognition. A resonance that suggested shared magic, shared purpose, shared secrets. Catalina's broken wolf stirred, pulling her attention to another thread, one she hadn't noticed before. A thin, dark line that ran from the false Jimena to somewhere deeper in the castle. Not a pack bond. Something else. Something that pulsed with the same twisted energy as the manufactured connection to Esperanza. Control thread. Leash disguised as magic. Catalina whispered to the guard beside her. I need to follow something. Watch Esperanza. Don't let anyone near her. My lady, the king commanded. The king will want to know what I'm about to find. She handed Esperanza to the guard, ignoring his protests, and slipped into the crowd. Following the dark thread was like following a trail of poison through water. It led her out of the great hall, through corridors that grew progressively darker and older, down stairs that descended into parts of the castle that hadn't been used in decades. She ended up in a chamber that reeked of blood magic. Symbols covered every surface, not the ancient marks of the Void Walkers, but newer, cruder versions. Dark magic that had been learned, not inherited. And in the center of the room stood an altar with a basin full of blood that was still fresh. Catalina's broken wolf howled a warning, but it was too late. I was wondering when you'd stumble into this. Lady Isabella stepped from the shadows, and her wolf manifested partially behind her. A massive creature with fur like midnight and eyes like blood. The broken wolf who sees too much. Alfonso's little secret weapon. I've been waiting to meet you properly, Catalina de Valdez. Catalina backed toward the door, but it slammed shut before she could reach it. Silver runes blazed along its frame, a sealing spell. She was trapped. You created the changeling, Catalina said, trying to keep her voice steady. Created. Well, I simply found someone desperate enough to volunteer for the transformation. Someone who hated Jimena as much as I did. Someone who wanted to destroy Alfonso from the inside. Isabella circled the altar, her fingers trailing through the blood. Do you know what it's like to be promised everything, only to have it stolen by a weaker wolf? Jimena was nothing. A mid-level alpha from a minor house. But she had what I didn't. She could give Alfonso something he wanted more than power. A true mate bond. Love. Isabella spat the word like poison. He chose love over alliance. Over strength. Over me. So I took everything from him. His mate. His peace. His trust in his own instincts. And now, through my little puppet, I'll take his kingdom. The baby, Catalina realized. You're going to claim the changeling's child is the true heir somehow. Frame Esperanza as illegitimate. Very good. Yes, I've been planting evidence that the real Jimena was unfaithful before she died. That Esperanza is not Alfonso's biological child. When my puppet gives birth, the child will be proven through blood magic to carry the true royal line, because I will make it so. Alfonso will be forced to acknowledge my puppet's spawn as his heir, or face civil war when the evidence of Esperanza's illegitimacy is revealed. He'll never accept it. He'll kill the changeling first. Which is why I've ensured that killing her will kill him too. Isabella smiled, cold and victorious. The changeling's life is bound to Alfonso's through a blood curse. If she dies by violence, his heart stops within the hour. If he tries to reject her as his mate publicly, his wolf tears itself apart. He's trapped Catalina. Trapped by magic he doesn't understand, can't break, and can't fight. The magnitude of the conspiracy made Catalina's head spin. This wasn't just about revenge. It was about conquest. About using blood magic to seize control of the most powerful pack in the kingdom. Why tell me all this? Catalina asked. If your plan is so perfect, why not just kill me and be done with it? Because I want to offer you a choice. Isabella moved closer, her wolf's eyes fixed on Catalina. I know what you are. Void Walker. Do you know how rare that is? How valuable. There hasn't been one in 1,000 years. You could reshape the entire pack structure of this kingdom. Break bonds. Create new ones. Make alphas into omegas and omegas into kings. She extended her hand. Join me. Help me take Valdez, and I'll give you everything you've ever wanted. Respect. Power. A whole wolf instead of a broken one. I have texts, rituals, knowledge that could complete what was left unfinished in you. For a moment, just a moment, Catalina was tempted. The promise of being whole. Of never again feeling the agony of her fractured wolf. Of having the power to stand beside kings instead of serving them. Then she thought of Esperanza. Of the way the baby's tiny hand felt in hers. Of the word mama spoken with absolute trust. No, Catalina said. Isabella's smile vanished. Then you die here. And without you, Alfonso will never uncover the truth in time. My puppet will give birth. My plan will succeed. And the house of Valdez will fall. She raised her hand, and the blood in the basin began to rise, forming shapes in the air. Wolves made of liquid crimson, their eyes empty and their teeth sharp. Blood constructs. Creatures of pure magic that couldn't be killed because they'd never been alive. Catalina's broken wolf howled, and she reached for it desperately. Reached into that fractured space between worlds, grasping for any power she could find. The void opened. She felt it like falling upward, like stepping through a door that existed in her mind. The physical world became translucent, and beneath it, she could see the truth of things. The blood constructs weren't solid. They were just energy given temporary form, bound together by Isabella's will and the power of the altar. And will could be broken. Catalina reached out with her fractured wolf, and the pieces that existed in the void sang with recognition. She touched the threads binding the blood constructs together and pulled. The creatures exploded into mist. Isabella staggered back, shock breaking through her composure. Impossible. You can't, you're broken. I'm unfinished, Catalina corrected, remembering Alfonso's words. There's a difference. She reached for Isabella's bonds next. Could see the threads connecting her to her pack, to her power, to the dark magic that saturated this chamber. They were strong, but not unbreakable. Catalina pulled. Isabella screamed as her connection to the blood magic shattered. The altar cracked down the middle, the symbols on the walls burning out one by one. The dark thread leading back to the false Jimena snapped like an overstressed rope. And in the great hall above, the changeling collapsed, her carefully maintained disguise beginning to fail as the magic sustaining it lost its anchor. Isabella shifted fully into her wolf form, all pretense of civility gone, and lunged at Catalina with jaws that could crush bone. Catalina didn't run. Couldn't run. The door was still sealed, and she was too slow, too weak, too human. But her broken wolf was in the void, and in the void, speed didn't matter. She reached into Isabella's chest, not physically but spiritually, and touched the core of her wolf. Felt the connection between beast and human, that fundamental bond that made them one being. And she pulled them apart. Isabella's wolf ripped free from her human body, manifesting as a fully physical creature while Isabella's human form dropped to the stone floor, convulsing. The wolf, separated from its human consciousness, operating on pure instinct, looked around in confusion and pain. Then it saw its own human body lying on the ground and began to howl. The sound was pure anguish, the cry of something that had been torn from its other half. Catalina felt sick. This was what she lived with every day. What her broken wolf experienced constantly. And she just forced that torture onto someone else, even someone who deserved it. "Stop," she whispered, reaching out again. "I'm sorry. I'm sorry." She tried to push Isabella's wolf back into her body, tried to heal what she'd just broken. But she didn't know how. The ancient texts hadn't taught her how to repair what she'd severed, only how to break it. The wolf collapsed beside Isabella's body, whimpering, slowly fading as it tried desperately to return to where it belonged but couldn't find the way. Footsteps thundered down the corridor. The door burst open, silver runes shattering under the force of the Lycan King's power. Alfonso took in the scene: the destroyed altar, Isabella's separated wolf and body, Catalina standing in the middle of it all with tears streaming down her face. "I didn't mean to," Catalina said. "I was defending myself and I didn't know how to stop, and now I can't fix it." Alfonso moved to Isabella, checking her pulse. "She's alive. Barely. And her wolf is fading." He looked at Sebastian, who'd followed him into the chamber. "Can this be repaired?" The old historian studied Isabella's condition with clinical detachment. "In theory, a void walker should be able to reunite a separated wolf with its human. But Catalina hasn't been trained in bonding, only in breaking. Without proper knowledge." He trailed off, the implication clear. "Then we have a choice," Alfonso said quietly. "Let Isabella die from separation trauma, or force Catalina to experiment with powers she doesn't understand in an attempt to save the life of someone who just tried to kill her." "There's a third option, Your Majesty," Sebastian said. "Use Isabella as leverage. Offer to reunite her wolf if she confesses everything. Names of her allies. Details of the conspiracy. How to break the blood curse binding you to the changeling." It was cold, practical, cruel, and it was the smart choice. Catalina looked at Isabella's wolf, still whimpering, still fading. She thought about living with a broken wolf her entire life. About the constant pain, the sense of incompleteness, the feeling that part of her soul was missing. She couldn't do that to someone. Not even Isabella. "I'll try to fix it," Catalina said. "But first she talks." They brought Isabella's human body back to consciousness with sharp-scented salts. Her eyes opened, unfocused and filled with terror. Being separated from your wolf was every shifter's worst nightmare made real. "Please," she gasped. "Please, my wolf, I can feel her dying." "Then speak quickly," Alfonso commanded. "Every name, every detail, everything." Isabella talked. She confessed to murdering the real Jimena at the summit, using a poison that mimicked natural heart failure. She named her co-conspirators: 3 nobles in the Eastern Territories, 2 council members in Valdez, and a dark magic practitioner named Teodoro who'd performed the changeling ritual. She described how they'd found a volunteer, a woman named Beatriz who'd been Jimena's servant and had her own reasons for hating the Luna Queen. "The blood curse," Alfonso pressed. "How do we break it?" "You can't," Isabella whispered. "Not without killing us both. It was designed to be unbreakable. The only way to sever it is if Beatriz willingly releases her claim on you, and she'll never do that. She'd rather die first. Then she'll get her wish." "Wait," Catalina interrupted. "If I can see the curse, maybe I can unravel it. Like I did with your blood constructs." "The curse is woven into Alfonso's heart," Isabella said. "One wrong move, one thread pulled incorrectly, and he dies instantly. Even a void walker would need perfect precision, perfect control. And you," she laughed bitterly. "You can barely control your power at all." It was true. Catalina knew it was true. But what choice did they have? "I have to try," she said. "Because if we kill Beatriz without breaking the curse first, Alfonso dies. And if Alfonso dies, Esperanza is orphaned and vulnerable to whoever makes the next move in this game. This is the only way." Alfonso met her eyes. "If you fail, my daughter loses both her father and her second mother. That's not acceptable." "Then I won't fail." "Catalina, you said my wolf isn't broken, it's unfinished. You said I could reshape the very nature of what we are. You bet everything on me when you gave me your name and put me in charge of your daughter's life." She stepped closer to him. "So bet on me now. Let me try to save you." The silence stretched between them. Then Alfonso nodded once, sharp and final. "When we return to Valdez. In the sealed archive where you first manifested your power. With Sebastian present to guide you and every precaution in place." He turned to his guards. "Take Isabella to the secured chambers. Keep her alive until her wolf recovers, which I'm told happens when separated wolf and human are kept in close proximity for long enough. She'll stand trial for her crimes after we've dealt with the changeling. And the baby? Catalina asked quietly. We examine it as agreed. If it's innocent, we find another way. They returned to Valdez in forced march, reaching the castle just as dawn broke over the eastern mountains. The false Jimena, Beatriz the changeling, had been secured in the royal chambers under heavy guard. Her disguise had partially failed when Isabella's control thread snapped, leaving her somewhere between her true form and Jimena's face. The result was unsettling, a face that shifted and flickered like a failing illusion. The nobles of the court were in an uproar. Accusations flew. Some claimed witchcraft. Others insisted the Luna Queen had been cursed. A few brave souls suggested that perhaps she'd never been their true queen at all. Alfonso let them talk. Let them speculate. He needed to know who would defend Beatriz, who would call for investigation, who would try to use the chaos to their advantage. Every reaction told him something about who might be part of Isabella's conspiracy. But first he had to survive the curse. They gathered in the sealed archive. Alfonso, Catalina, Sebastian, and two of the king's most trusted guards. The ancient symbols on the walls remained dark after Catalina's last use of them, waiting for Void Walker power to bring them to life again. Show me the curse, Catalina said. Alfonso removed his shirt, revealing a chest marked with old scars from 100 battles. But beneath the physical, in the realm that only Catalina could see, there was something else. A web of dark threads wrapped around his heart like a cage, pulsing in time with his heartbeat. Each thread was connected to others, creating a pattern so complex that pulling any single strand would cause the whole structure to collapse inward, crushing his heart in the process. It's beautiful, Catalina whispered, horrified. Whoever designed this was a master. Every thread reinforces the others. It's like trying to remove a single thread from a tapestry without disturbing anything else. Can you break it? Alfonso asked. Catalina reached out with her fractured wolf, letting it slip into the void where bonds and curses lived. She touched one of the dark threads carefully, trying to understand its structure. Pain exploded through the connection. Alfonso gasped, his hand going to his chest. Catalina jerked back immediately. I'm sorry. Don't apologize. Try again. I've survived worse pain. She tried a different approach. Instead of pulling at the threads, she tried to understand them, traced them back to their source, following them to where they originated. They led to another set of threads wrapped around the changeling's heart, a mirror curse. If Beatriz died, the threads would snap back and destroy Alfonso's heart. If Alfonso died, Beatriz would follow within hours. True death pact. The ultimate expression of a forced mate bond. I can't just remove the threads, Catalina realized. They're self-sustaining. They feed off both your life forces. I need to. He paused, thinking. I need to transfer them. Transfer to what? To me. She met Alfonso's shocked gaze. My wolf exists partially in the void. If I can move the curse from your heart to mine, it would anchor to something that's already fractured. The curse might not be able to maintain itself in a spirit that's split between realms. Or it could kill you instantly, Sebastian said. That's possible too. No. Alfonso's voice was absolute. I won't risk it. You don't have a choice, Your Majesty. This curse was designed to be unbreakable through normal means. But I'm not normal. My wolf is already broken. What's one more fracture? Catalina. Esperanza needs at least one of us alive. If this fails, she still has you. But if we don't try, if we kill Beatriz without breaking the curse first, she loses everyone. Catalina moved closer. Let me do this. Let me be useful for once in my broken life. They stared at each other, and Catalina saw the moment Alfonso relented. Saw the exact instant when the Lycan King decided to trust the broken wolf with his life. Do it, he said. Catalina took a deep breath and reached into the void with everything she had. Her fractured wolf howled as she touched the dark threads wrapped around Alfonso's heart, but she didn't pull back this time. She endured the pain, traced each thread's pattern, memorized how they connected and reinforced each other. Then she began to move them. It was like trying to transplant a living thing from one body to another. The threads fought her, clinging to Alfonso's life force, resistant to change. But Catalina was persistent. She offered her own fractured wolf as an anchor point, using the pieces of her spirit that existed in the void as bridges. Slowly, thread by thread, the curse began to transfer. Alfonso's pain decreased as each thread left his heart. But Catalina's increased. She felt the curse trying to wrap around her spirit, trying to establish the same death pact with Beatriz, but failing because Catalina's wolf wasn't whole enough to hold it properly. The curse began to unravel. Without a stable anchor, without two complete souls to bind together, the intricate web of threads started to collapse. Not inward, not destroying anything, but outward, dissipating like smoke in wind. Catalina watched in amazement as the curse that had been called unbreakable simply ceased to exist, unable to maintain its structure in the fractured space of her void-touched wolf. She pulled back, exhausted, and found Alfonso staring at her with something like awe. "It's gone," he said, his hand over his heart. "I can feel it. The weight I've been carrying for 18 months, it's gone." Sebastian was already checking him, pressing his ear to Alfonso's chest, counting heartbeats, searching for any sign of lingering curse work. "Clean," he said finally. "Whatever you did, it worked. The curse is completely removed." "Then it's time to deal with the changeling," Alfonso said, his voice hardening with purpose. They found Beatriz in the royal chambers, still under guard, her false face flickering between Jimena's features and her own. She looked up when Alfonso entered, and fear flashed in her eyes. "You broke it," she whispered. "The curse." "How?" "With power you didn't account for." Alfonso gestured, and the guards stepped aside, revealing Catalina. "Meet the Voidwalker, the broken wolf who unmade everything you and Isabella created." Beatriz's hand went to her pregnant belly protectively. "If you kill me, you kill an innocent child. Which is why Catalina is going to examine the child first. If it's truly innocent, if it's not a magical construct designed to usurp my daughter, then we'll find another solution for you. And if I refuse, you don't get that option." Catalina approached carefully, her broken wolf reaching into the void once more. She touched Beatriz's belly, expecting to see twisted threads, magical constructs, something artificial and wrong. Instead, she saw the most natural pack bond she'd ever witnessed. The baby's wolf was already formed, already strong, and it was connected to Beatriz with threads of pure gold. Mother to child. Nothing forced. Nothing manufactured. Just the instinctive love of a parent for the life growing inside them. And there was another thread. A thinner one but unmistakable. The baby's wolf recognized Alfonso. Not as a parent. The changeling magic had prevented that true bond from forming. But as pack. As king. Alpha. "It's real," Catalina said softly. "The baby is Alfonso's biological child. Somehow, despite the changeling magic, despite everything Beatriz did, this child is innocent and true." Beatriz began to cry. "I didn't want this. I didn't want to love her. I took Jimena's place for revenge, to destroy Alfonso for Isabella's gold, to finally have the power I'd been denied my whole life as a servant. But when I realized I was pregnant, when I felt her wolf for the first time, she broke down completely. I can't let you kill her. I won't. Kill me if you must, but spare my daughter." Alfonso's face was stone. "You murdered my mate. You've lived as an impostor in my castle for 18 months. You've destabilized my kingdom and put my heir in danger. And you expect mercy. No, I expect justice. But my daughter has done nothing except exist. She didn't choose this. She didn't ask to be born from blood magic and lies." Beatriz looked at Catalina. "You understand, don't you? You were born broken, cursed, wrong, but you deserve to live. So does she." It was a low blow. using Catalina's own history against her. But it was also true. Catalina turned to Alfonso. She's right. The baby is innocent. And killing Beatriz now would mean either killing the baby too, or leaving a royal daughter motherless before she's even born. What do you suggest? That I let a murderer and impostor raise my child? No. But there are other options. Beatriz could be imprisoned until the baby is born, then executed for her crimes while the child is raised in the castle. Or she could be exiled to a far territory, stripped of her magic, with the baby given to a trusted family to raise. Or, Catalina hesitated. Or you could use my power. Everyone went still. What do you mean? Alfonso asked carefully. I can separate wolves from humans. I proved that with Isabella. But I can also see bonds, and I'm learning to shape them. What if? She took a breath. What if I could remove Beatriz's memories? Not kill her wolf, but reshape the bonds in her mind. Make her forget Isabella, forget the conspiracy. Forget that she was ever anyone except a servant who happened to be pregnant with a child the kingdom believes is the Luna Queen's daughter. The implications hung in the air like a blade. You're talking about destroying who she is, Sebastian said quietly. Remaking her mind. That's darker than any blood magic I've ever encountered. Maybe. But it lets the baby keep her mother. It gives Alfonso an heir who isn't tainted by scandal. It ends the conspiracy without execution or exile. Catalina met Beatriz's eyes. And it gives her a clean slate. A chance to actually be the mother her daughter needs, without the weight of her crimes. That's not mercy, Beatriz whispered. That's oblivion. You'd be killing who I am just as surely as a blade to the heart. Yes, but your daughter would live, and she'd have a mother who loved her without the complication of treason and murder. Alfonso paced the chamber, his wolf prowling just beneath his skin, his mind working through every angle. If we do this, if we use your power this way, we set a precedent. The crown having the ability to reshape minds, to erase memories, to remake people. That's the power of tyrants. Which is why it would only be used this once, in this specific situation, with all of us as witnesses to ensure it's not abused, Catalina said. I'm not offering to be your weapon, Your Majesty. I'm offering a solution to an impossible problem. The Lycan King stopped pacing and looked at Beatriz. What do you choose? Execution after the birth, or oblivion now? Beatriz's hands trembled on her belly. If you erase my memories, will I still love her? Will I still be her mother? The bond will remain, Catalina promised. That's natural, unbreakable. You'll love her with everything you are. You just won't remember why you're living in the castle, won't remember being anyone except a mother trusted to raise a royal daughter. And my crimes, my guilt, gone. You'll be innocent in your own mind. Beatriz closed her eyes. Do it. Let me forget. Let me be someone worthy of being her mother. So Catalina did something that terrified her. She reached into Beatriz's mind through the void, found the threads of memory that connected to Isabella, to the murder, to the conspiracy. They blazed bright and dark, twisted together with guilt and fear and hate. And carefully, thread by thread, she unraveled them. It wasn't clean. Memories fought to stay connected, clinging to other experiences, other thoughts. Catalina had to make choices about what to keep and what to remove. She left Beatriz's genuine memories of serving in the castle, of befriending Jimena before jealousy twisted into hate. She removed the murder but left the grief, letting Beatriz believe that Jimena had died naturally and that Alfonso, in his grief, had taken comfort in a brief encounter with a servant. She reshaped the timeline, made Beatriz believe that she'd fallen in love with Alfonso during that vulnerable moment, that he'd been kind to her, that when she discovered she was pregnant she'd been terrified but also hopeful. She made Beatriz remember Alfonso acknowledging the child privately, agreeing to let Beatriz raise the baby as a ward of the castle, giving her a place of honor as the mother of a royal daughter. It was a complete fiction. But it was a kind fiction. One that would let Beatriz live without the crushing weight of her crimes. When Catalina finally withdrew from the void, Beatriz blinked as if waking from a deep sleep. Your Majesty, she said, her voice uncertain. Sorry. Did I fall asleep? The pregnancy makes me so tired. Alfonso's face revealed nothing. Rest, he said quietly. We'll speak more when you're stronger. After Beatriz was escorted back to guest chambers, no longer guarded as a prisoner but protected as a royal mother, Sebastian turned to Catalina with something like horror in his eyes. Do you understand what you just did? The power you just wielded? I saved a baby's life and gave a criminal a second chance. You rewrote reality itself. Changed not just what someone remembered but who they are. That's not healing, Catalina. That's not even breaking bonds. That's playing God. Maybe, Catalina said, exhausted beyond measure. But sometimes gods are necessary. Alfonso said nothing. Just watched her with those amber eyes. And Catalina couldn't tell if he was impressed or terrified. Probably both. The trials of Isabella and her co-conspirators lasted 3 weeks. With Beatriz's memory altered, with Isabella still recovering from her separation trauma, the conspiracy fell apart without its leaders. The nobles involved turned on each other, each trying to prove they were the least guilty, each offering evidence against the others in exchange for mercy. Isabella herself was executed at the new moon. Her wolf had been reunited with her body after 10 days of separation, long enough to torture her with the same brokenness Catalina lived with every day, short enough that the reunion was possible. She died with her wolf intact, which was more mercy than many thought she deserved. Teodoro, the dark magic practitioner, was never found. He disappeared into the eastern territories, and Alfonso decided that hunting him wasn't worth the resources when the immediate threat had been neutralized. The kingdom settled. Beatriz gave birth to a healthy baby girl 6 months later. They named her Luz, Light, and Beatriz loved her with the fierce devotion of a mother who'd been given a second chance. She never remembered her crimes. Never knew that she'd once been a murderer and impostor. She simply existed as a minor noble who'd been honored by the king's attention and lived to raise his daughter. Alfonso never took another mate. The loss of the real Jimena was a wound that wouldn't heal, made worse by the knowledge that he'd lived with her murderer for 18 months without knowing. He poured himself into ruling, into rebuilding trust with his territories, into raising his daughters. Because Esperanza had a sister now. The truth of Luz's parentage was kept secret from the court. Officially, she was the Luna Queen's daughter, born before the illness that had claimed Jimena's life. Only a handful of people knew the real story. And Catalina became something unprecedented in the history of the kingdom. She trained her Void Walker abilities under Sebastian's guidance, learning to see bonds more clearly, to understand their nature, to help wolves who suffered from broken connections to mates or pack. She never again used her power to reshape memories. That terrifying moment with Beatriz remained a singular event, a line she'd crossed once and refused to cross again. She remained Esperanza's second mother, watching the pup grow into a strong, curious child whose wolf showed signs of being even more powerful than her father's. She taught Esperanza the old lullabies, told her stories about the ancient Void Walkers, prepared her for the day when she would be queen. And she learned something surprising. On Esperanza's 2nd birthday, during the celebration feast, Alfonso approached Catalina in the gardens where she'd gone to escape the noise of the party. I wanted to thank you, he said without preamble, for everything you've done, for saving my daughter, for uncovering the conspiracy, for giving Luz a chance at a real life, for breaking a curse that should have killed me. You don't have to thank me, Your Majesty. I was just. Don't. He held up a hand. Don't diminish what you are, what you've become. 2 years ago you were a servant in the laundry rooms. Now you're the most powerful wolf in my kingdom, and you wield that power with more wisdom than nobles who've been trained in leadership their entire lives. Catalina felt her broken wolf stir at the praise. I'm still broken. No, you're still unfinished. There's a difference. He moved closer. I've been reading the ancient texts with Sebastian. Do you know why the Void Walkers disappeared from history? Because they died out. Because they evolved. The text suggests that void walkers who mastered their abilities underwent a final transformation. Their fractured wolves became whole again, not as normal wolves but as something new. Something that existed fully in both the physical world and the spirit plane simultaneously. Something more than wolf, more than human. Something that the old texts called the bridge, a being that could walk between all realms. Catalina's heart raced. You think I could become whole? I think you're already becoming it. Every time you use your power, every time you touch the void, you're bringing the pieces of your wolf closer together. Slow. Probably painful. But it's happening. How long? The texts aren't clear. Years. Maybe decades. But Catalina. His amber eyes held hers. When it happens, when you finally transform into what you're meant to be, you'll be the first bridge to exist in over 1,000 years. You'll have power that makes kings kneel. And I need to know that when that day comes, you'll still be the same person who chose to save an innocent baby over seeking revenge on her mother. That you'll still be the broken girl who became a mother to my daughter. It was a question disguised as a statement. A test wrapped in trust. I will, Catalina promised. Because I learned something from being broken, Your Majesty. I learned that power without compassion is just cruelty with a crown. I learned that sometimes the broken things are the ones that understand how to heal others. I learned that being a mother to Esperanza matters more than being a bridge or a void walker or anything else I might become. Alfonso smiled. A real smile, the first one Catalina had ever seen from him. That's what I needed to hear. He turned to leave, then paused. Catalina. There's one more thing the texts say about bridges. What's that? They could mate with alpha kings. Bond with them in ways that normal wolves couldn't, creating connections that transcended pack hierarchy and pack law. The old bridges were often the power behind thrones, the advisors and partners who guided kingdoms through impossible times. He said it casually, like he was discussing the weather. But Catalina's broken wolf howled with sudden understanding. She didn't know what to say. Your Majesty, I couldn't. I'm not asking you for anything. Not now. Maybe not ever. I'm simply telling you that when your transformation completes, when you become what you're meant to be, there will be a place for you here. Not just as a second mother to my daughter, but as an equal, as a partner, as... He stopped himself. As something more if you choose. Then he was gone, leaving Catalina alone in the garden with her fractured wolf and a future she couldn't quite comprehend. The years passed. Esperanza grew into a fierce, intelligent child who commanded her wolf with the ease of someone born to rule. She called Catalina Mama Segunda, second mother, and never questioned why her family was different from others. She accepted that she had a father who ruled alone, a second mother who could see things others couldn't, and a younger sister in Luz who didn't know they were connected by blood. Luz grew up thinking she was a ward of the castle, honored but not royal. She and Esperanza were close despite the supposed difference in their stations. Beatriz raised her with love and kindness, never knowing that every happy memory was built on an altered foundation. And Catalina's wolf slowly, painfully, began to piece itself back together. It happened in moments. During full moons when her fractured wolf would howl, she'd feel pieces of it sliding back into place. When she used her void walker powers to help broken bonds, her own brokenness would ease slightly. When she held Esperanza and Luz, teaching them about wolf nature and pack bonds, her spirit would pulse with warmth that felt like healing. On Esperanza's 10th birthday, Catalina shifted for the first time. It wasn't a full shift. Her wolf was still incomplete. But for 30 seconds, 30 glorious, painful, perfect seconds, she had paws instead of hands and silver fur instead of skin, and she howled with a voice that shook the castle walls. Esperanza clapped with delight. Luz stared in wonder. Alfonso watched with that same amber-eyed intensity he'd had since the beginning. And Catalina felt hope for the first time since she was a child. Maybe she would be whole someday. Maybe the bridge transformation would happen. Maybe she would become something that the world hadn't seen in a millennium. But even if she didn't, even if her wolf remained fractured forever, She had already become something more important. She was a mother, protector, a healer of broken things. And that was enough. 15 years after the night Esperanza first called her Mama, Catalina stood on the castle balcony watching the sunrise paint the mountains gold. Her wolf stirred inside her. Still not whole, still fractured, but closer than it had ever been. She could feel it now, could sense the pieces slowly gravitating toward each other like stars pulled together by invisible forces. Below in the training yards, Esperanza was sparring with the King's Guard. At 17, she was already formidable. Her wolf nearly as large as Alfonso's, her tactical mind sharp, her leadership unquestioned. She would make a magnificent queen someday. Luz was in the library, studying diplomatic protocols with Sebastián. At 16, she'd developed a gift for negotiation and strategy that made her invaluable during territory disputes. She still didn't know she was the Lycan King's daughter, but she served the crown with the dedication of someone who'd been raised with love and purpose. And Beatriz tended the castle gardens, happy and peaceful, never haunted by crimes she couldn't remember committing. "You're thinking too loud," Alfonso said, appearing beside Catalina on the balcony. He did that sometimes, materialized without warning, his wolf making him silent as death when he chose to be. "Just reflecting," Catalina said. "It's been a strange 15 years. Strange is one word for it." He leaned against the railing, his shoulder almost touching hers. Over the years, they developed an easy friendship built on shared purpose and mutual respect. But there was always something else beneath it. Something neither of them had ever named. "Sebastián thinks your transformation might happen soon. He says the texts describe a period of rapid integration in the final years." "I know. Can feel it. My wolf is calling to itself, pulling the pieces back together. She struggled for words. "It's like remembering something I never knew I'd forgotten." "Are you afraid? Terrified? What if I become something I don't recognize? What if the power changes who I am?" Alfonso was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Do you remember what you told me 15 years ago? When I asked if you'd still be the same person after your transformation? I said I would be. And you are. Despite everything you've learned, everything you've done, everything you've become, you're still the woman who chose compassion over revenge. Who saved a baby because it was the right thing to do. Who reshaped someone's entire mind to give them a second chance." He turned to face her fully. "The power doesn't define you, Catalina. You define the power. You have a lot of faith in someone who was a laundry servant. I have faith in the woman who saved my daughter. In the void walker who broke an unbreakable curse. In the mother who raised an heir with wisdom and love." His amber eyes held hers. "In the person I've come to." He stopped himself. "In my most trusted advisor." That pause. That hesitation. Catalina's broken wolf howled at it. "Alfonso," she said quietly, using his name without title for maybe the third time in 15 years. "What are we doing?" "I don't know." His honesty was startling. "The texts say a bridge can bond with an alpha king. That it creates a connection unlike anything else. Not a mate bond, not a pack bond, but something that exists in both realms simultaneously. A partnership of equals. I'm not your equal. I'm not a queen. You're the most powerful wolf in my kingdom. You've saved my life, protected my daughters, and kept this realm stable through conspiracies that should have destroyed us. If that doesn't make you my equal, I don't know what does. The court would never accept it. A broken wolf becoming queen. You're not broken anymore. You're becoming something new. And the court will accept what I tell them to accept." He reached out, his hand stopping just short of touching her face. "But I won't force this. Won't push. I'm simply telling you that when your transformation completes, when you become the bridge, there's a place beside me if you want it. Not as a second mother to Esperanza. Not as an advisor. As my partner. My equal. My." The word he didn't say hung between them like dawn breaking. Before Catalina could respond, a howl split the morning air. It came from the eastern border. A warning call. Then another. Then dozens more, until the entire eastern territory was singing with alarm. Alfonso's wolf rose instantly, his eyes flashing amber. That's the invasion signal. Iran. The great hall was already filling with nobles and military commanders when they arrived. Maps were being unrolled, scouts were giving reports, and the message was clear. The northern territories had amassed an army at the border. 3,000 wolves. Armed. Organized. Led by someone the scouts couldn't identify. "It's Teodoro," Sebastian said, bursting into the hall with ancient texts clutched in his arms. "The dark magic practitioner who escaped 15 years ago. He's been building power in the north, creating blood constructs, assembling rogues and wolves desperate enough to follow someone who promises them power." "What does he want?" Alfonso demanded. "Revenge. Against you for executing Isabella. Against Catalina for destroying his magic." The old historian's hands trembled. "And he wants to capture the bridge. The texts say that if a dark magic user can bind a bridge, they can use that connection to reshape pact bonds across entire territories. Turn alphas into slaves. Break ancient alliances. Remake the kingdom in their image." Every eye in the room turned to Catalina. "He's coming for me," she said quietly. "Then we evacuate you immediately," Alfonso commanded. "Get her to the western territories. Take Esperanza and lose with her. I'll handle the defense." "No." Catalina's voice cut through his orders. "If I run, he follows. His entire army follows. You'd just be moving the battlefield and putting more people in danger. If you stay, he captures you. If I stay, I fight." She felt her broken wolf stirring, felt the pieces of it beginning to resonate with each other. Sebastian, the texts. What happens if someone begins their bridge transformation in the middle of combat? The old historian's eyes went wide. "No, Catalina, the transformation takes hours. Maybe days. You'd be completely vulnerable while it happens. The old bridges always found safe places, prepared rituals." "What happens?" Sebastian swallowed hard. "If the transformation completes, the new bridge has access to every bond in a 100-mile radius. Can see them all, touch them all, reshape them all. It would be..." He struggled for words. "It would be like a god awakening on a battlefield. Or a disaster if Teodoro gets to me before it completes." "Exactly." Alfonso grabbed Catalina's shoulders. "You are not using yourself as bait. I forbid it. You can't forbid me from becoming what I was always meant to be." She met his eyes. "This is happening, Alfonso. My wolf is already starting. Can feel it. The pieces are pulling together faster now, responding to the danger. I can either try to suppress it and fail, letting the transformation happen at the worst possible moment, or I can surrender to it now, in a place where you can defend me until it completes. This is insane. This is necessary." She touched his face, let herself do what she'd wanted to for years. "I trust you to protect me while I'm vulnerable. I trust Esperanza to fight beside her father. I trust that Sebastian will find whatever ancient ritual might help. And I trust that when I wake up as a bridge, I'll be able to stop Teodoro's army without unnecessary bloodshed." Alfonso looked like he wanted to argue, wanted to lock her in the most secure chamber in the castle and fight this battle without risking her. But he was also a king, and kings understood necessary sacrifices. "Where?" he asked finally. "The sealed archive, where my power first manifested. The ancient symbols there might help channel the transformation." "Fine. But you're getting every protection I can give you. Guards, wards, Sebastian performing every defensive ritual he knows. And if anything goes wrong, if I think for 1 second that Teodoro will reach you before the transformation completes, I'm evacuating you even if I have to throw you over my shoulder and run." Despite everything, Catalina smiled. "Deal." They had 6 hours before the army reached the castle. 6 hours to prepare defenses, position troops, evacuate civilians, and give Catalina the best chance at surviving her transformation. Sebastian drew wards around the archive with silver and salt, muttering prayers in languages that predated the kingdom. The king's guards stationed themselves at every entrance to the lower levels. Alfonso himself stood outside the archive door, his wolf fully manifested, a living wall between Catalina and any threat. Esperanza appeared, fully armed, her wolf eager. "Let me help guard her. You should be with the main forces." "She's my mother," Esperanza said simply. "Where else would I be?" Alfonso studied his daughter, seeing the determination in her eyes, the set of her shoulders. She was so much like him, and so much like Catalina, strong in ways that had nothing to do with physical power. "Guard the archive entrance with your life," he commanded. "I will." Inside the sealed archive, Catalina sat in the center of the circular chamber. The ancient symbols on the walls were already beginning to glow, responding to her presence, to the transformation beginning in her spirit. Her broken wolf was howling. Not in pain anymore. In recognition. In completion. The pieces were coming together. She could feel them sliding into place like a puzzle solving itself. Parts of her wolf that had existed in the physical realm were merging with parts that had lived in the spirit plane. Fragments that had been scattered through the void were being recalled, pulled back to a center that was finally strong enough to hold them. Hurt. Gods, it hurt. Like bones breaking and resetting, like skin tearing and reweaving, like dying and being reborn all at once. But beneath the pain was something else. Power. Real power. The kind that could reshape reality. Outside, the battle began. Teodoro's army hit the eastern walls with the force of an avalanche. Blood constructs and corrupted wolves, rogues and dark magic users, all of them driven by promises of power and revenge. Alfonso led the defense with the calm efficiency of a king who'd fought 100 battles. He didn't waste energy on dramatic charges or showy displays. He simply directed his forces with surgical precision, plugging gaps in the line, reinforcing weak points, making every wolf count for 3. Esperanza fought beside him, her wolf tearing through blood constructs with savage efficiency. She'd inherited her father's tactical mind and her second mother's instinct for seeing weakness. She was magnificent, but they were outnumbered. And Teodoro hadn't shown himself yet. 2 hours into the battle, the dark magic user finally appeared. He looked nothing like his old descriptions. 15 years of experimenting with blood magic had twisted him into something barely recognizable as a wolf. His body shifted between human and beast without fully committing to either. His eyes glowed with corrupted power, and the aura around him made every wolf in the castle recoil instinctively. "Alfonso de Valdez," his voice boomed across the battlefield. "Give me the Void Walker, and I'll spare your castle." "I'll give you a blade through your throat instead," Alfonso called back. Teodoro laughed. "Then watch your kingdom burn." He raised his hands, and the blood constructs surged forward with renewed fury. But these weren't like the ones Catalina had destroyed years ago. These were stronger, more stable, created with knowledge gained from 15 years of study and preparation. They tore through the king's guard like paper. Alfonso fought his way through the constructs, his wolf massive and terrible, heading straight for Teodoro. If he could kill the source, the constructs would fall. But Teodoro was ready for him, had been ready for 15 years. The dark magic user met the Lycan King's charge with magic that wrapped around Alfonso's wolf like chains. Not physical chains, spiritual ones. Threads of corrupted power that bound his wolf's movement, that slowed his attacks, that made every step an effort. "Did you think I spent 15 years hiding?" Teodoro laughed. "I studied. I learned. I prepared for this exact moment. Your wolf is strong, King, but my magic was designed specifically to counter you." He was right. Alfonso's attacks were slower, less coordinated. The corrupted threads were draining his power, feeding it back to Teodoro with every movement. Esperanza saw her father struggling and charged to help. But 3 blood constructs blocked her path, keeping her occupied while Teodoro worked his magic on the king. In the archive, Catalina felt the battle through the bonds. Saw Alfonso weakening. Saw Esperanza surrounded. Saw the castle's defenses beginning to fail. And her transformation was only half complete. Her wolf was coming together, but too slowly. She could feel the power building, could sense the bridge awakening inside her. But it wasn't fast enough. Wasn't strong enough yet. Unless she forced it. The texts had warned against forcing the transformation. Had said that trying to rush it could shatter the wolf permanently, could kill the body and spirit simultaneously, could create something corrupted and wrong. But Alfonso was dying. Esperanza was in danger. And Catalina had not come this far, survived this much, become this strong, just to hide in a sealed chamber while the people she loved were destroyed. She reached into the void with everything she had. Reached past the pain, past the fear, past the warnings and the cautious integration. She grabbed the scattered pieces of her wolf and slammed them together with pure will. The transformation that should have taken hours happened in seconds. Agony exploded through every cell of her body. Her human form shattered. Her wolf erupted into existence. Massive, silver, glowing with power that came from both the physical and spirit realms simultaneously. But she didn't stop there. The bridge transformation continued. Her wolf began to exist in both places at once. Solid flesh in the physical world, ethereal spirit in the void, with consciousness threading between them like lightning. When she opened her eyes, Catalina could see everything. Every wolf in the castle. Every bond connecting them. Every thread of pack loyalty, family love, mate connections, and alpha dominance. She could see them like stars in the night sky, like rivers of light flowing through the world. And she could touch them all. Catalina exploded from the archive. The guards at the entrance gasped as she passed. Not because she was running, because she was existing in two places at once. Her physical wolf form raced through the corridors while her spirit form walked through walls, phased through obstacles, moved with the speed of thought. She reached the battlefield in seconds. Teodoro saw her coming and his eyes went wide with triumph. "The bridge," he shouted. "Finally!" He raised his hands to bind her, to wrap her in the same corrupted threads that held Alfonso captive, to claim the power he'd spent 15 years preparing to steal. But Catalina wasn't a newly transformed bridge stumbling through her first moments of power. She was a woman who'd been broken her entire life and had learned to fight from that broken place. She was a mother who'd protected children against assassins and conspirators. She was a void walker who'd unraveled curses and unmade blood constructs. She was not someone you could chain. Catalina reached into the void and touched every corrupted thread Teodoro had created. Saw how they were structured, how they fed on stolen life force, how they bound and drained and controlled. And she pulled them all at once. The threads exploded. Every blood construct on the battlefield disintegrated instantly. Every corrupted bond snapped. Every spell Teodoro had woven over 15 years of preparation unraveled in a single catastrophic moment. The backlash hit Teodoro like a physical blow. He staggered, blood pouring from his eyes and nose. His twisted body trying to compensate for the sudden loss of all that stolen power. Alfonso broke free from the remaining binding threads. His wolf surging forward to finish what Catalina had started. But she held up a paw, her physical form and spirit form moving in perfect synchronization. "Wait!" The Lycan King stopped, his amber eyes questioning. Catalina approached Teodoro, who was on his knees, coughing blood. His body beginning to collapse without the magic that had sustained it. "You studied the bridges for 15 years, she said, her voice resonating in both the physical and spirit realms. "You learned about their power, their abilities. But did you learn about their purpose?" Teodoro looked up at her with hate-filled eyes. "To rule. To reshape the world. No. To heal what's broken. To fix what's been corrupted. To bridge the gaps between wolves and bring balance to pack bonds." She reached out with her bridge senses and saw into Teodoro's spirit. Saw the small, scared Omega he'd been before dark magic twisted him. Saw the rejection he'd faced, the abuse he'd suffered, the wounds that had driven him to seek power at any cost. She saw herself. What she might have become if bitterness had won instead of love. "I could kill you," Catalina said quietly. "End you here. Or I could show you what real bridge power does." She touched the corrupted mass of his spirit with her bridge consciousness. And she healed it. Not by erasing it like she'd done with Beatrice's memories. Not by destroying it like she'd done with Isabella's bonds. But by carefully, painstakingly untangling every corrupted thread, every twisted connection, every broken piece, and putting them back the way they were meant to be. She couldn't undo 15 years of dark magic in an instant. Couldn't erase his crimes or absolve his choices. But she could give him back what he'd lost when he'd started down that path. Could show him what he'd given up in exchange for corrupted power. Could give him the chance to choose differently. When she withdrew, Teodoro collapsed completely. The dark magic that had sustained his twisted form was gone. He was just a man now. Older, weaker, broken by his own choices but no longer corrupted at the core. "You're showing him mercy?" Alfonso asked, incredulous. "I'm showing him what I wish someone had shown me when I was young and broken and angry at the world," Catalina replied. "What happens to him next is your decision as king. But he's no longer a threat. Just a criminal who'll have to live with what he's done." Alfonso studied Teodoro for a long moment. Then he signaled his guards. "Take him to the dungeon. He stands trial for his crimes. Execution or imprisonment. The court will decide." As the guards dragged Teodoro away, the battlefield fell silent. 3,000 wolves, Teodoro's army, stood frozen, unsure what to do now that their leader had fallen and his blood constructs had been destroyed. Catalina turned her bridge consciousness toward them. She could see their bonds. Most were rogues who'd been cast out of their packs, desperate for belonging. Some were criminals seeking power. But many were just scared, manipulated wolves who'd been promised a better life by a charismatic leader who'd lied. She spoke, and her voice carried to every wolf on the field. "You have a choice. Return to your territories. Face whatever justice awaits you there. Or swear to the crown of Valdez, submit to the Lycan King's authority, and find a place in a kingdom that values strength but also mercy." It was a gamble. Offering asylum to an invading army could be seen as weakness. But Catalina could see their bonds, could feel their genuine desperation, could sense that most of them weren't truly evil, just lost. One by one, the wolves began to kneel, began to bare their throats in submission, began to choose mercy over exile. Not all of them. Some fled into the forests, choosing freedom over service. But most stayed. Most chose to become part of something larger than themselves. And Alfonso, watching his kingdom's population increase by nearly 3,000 wolves in a single moment, looked at Catalina with something that might have been awe. "You just reshaped my entire kingdom without asking permission," he said. "I'm a bridge," she replied. "It's what we do. Also, you're welcome for saving your life, your daughter, and your castle." Despite the gravity of the moment, Alfonso laughed. Then, in front of his entire army, in front of every noble and wolf who'd witnessed the battle, he transformed back to human form, walked to where Catalina stood in her massive silver bridge wolf form, and knelt. "Catalina de Valdez," he said formally. "Bridge of the void. Healer of bonds. Mother to my heir. You have proven yourself beyond any doubt. So I ask you now before all witnesses, will you stand beside me not as an advisor, not as a second mother, but as my partner? As my queen? As my equal in all things?" The battlefield went silent. Catalina transformed back to human form. Her first full transformation and reversal, accomplished with the ease of someone who'd been shifting her entire life. She stood before the kneeling Lycan King, aware that every eye was on them, that this moment would define the kingdom's future. "I was broken," she said quietly. "Cast out. Cursed. I wasn't supposed to exist. Wasn't supposed to matter. Wasn't supposed to become anything except a cautionary tale about mercy misplaced. But you became everything instead. I became what I needed to be. For Esperanza. For Luz. For this kingdom. For you. She reached down and lifted his chin, met those amber eyes that had watched her with patience and faith for 15 years. Yes, Alfonso de Valdez. I'll stand beside you. As your partner. As your queen. As your equal. As my mate. That word. The one he'd never said. The bond that neither of them had dared to name. The texts say a bridge bonding with an alpha king creates something unprecedented, Catalina said. Something that exists in both realms. Something that can never be broken by distance or magic or even death. I'm aware of the texts. Are you sure? Because once we bond, you're stuck with the broken girl from the laundry rooms forever. Literally forever. Bridge bonds don't end. Alfonso stood, bringing himself face to face with her. I've been stuck with you for 15 years already. What's eternity compared to that? She laughed. Actually laughed, there on the battlefield, surrounded by thousands of witnesses, while proposing to reshape the fundamental power structure of the kingdom. Then she kissed him. And the bond formed. It wasn't like normal mate bonds that Catalina had seen. Those were beautiful but ultimately physical connections. This was something else. Something that threaded through both the physical and spirit realms, that anchored in the void itself, that connected not just their wolves but their very essences. She could feel him. Not just his emotions or his thoughts but the core of who he was. His strength and his vulnerability. His love for his daughters and his grief for his lost mate. His burden of leadership and his fierce determination to protect his people. His faith in Catalina and his hope that they could build something better together. And he could feel her too. All the broken pieces she'd carried, all the strength she'd built from weakness, all the love she'd learned to give despite being taught she didn't deserve it. When they finally broke apart, the bond settled into place with a rightness that felt like coming home. The battlefield erupted in howls, not of challenge but of acceptance. The wolves of Valdez recognizing their new queen. The surrendered army acknowledging her power. Even the nobles who'd whispered about the broken girl for years couldn't deny what they'd witnessed. Esperanza tackled Catalina in a hug so enthusiastic it nearly knocked them both down. Finally, she said. I've been waiting for you two to figure this out for years. You knew. Everyone knew. You were the only ones pretending it wasn't happening. He grinned. Does this mean I can officially call you Mother now instead of Mama Segunda? Catalina felt tears prick her eyes. I'd like that. Good. Because Luz is going to be so excited. She's been asking for months when you were going to marry Father and become our real mother. Luz doesn't know I already am. She suspects. She's not stupid. But she loves you anyway. We both do. The reconstruction took months. The battle had damaged the eastern walls, destroyed several courtyards, and left the castle in need of significant repairs. But more than physical reconstruction, the kingdom needed to integrate 3,000 new wolves who'd surrendered after the battle. Catalina used her bridge abilities to help. She could see pack bonds, could identify which wolves would work well together, could spot those who were genuinely trying to reform versus those who remained threats. She helped create new pack structures, new hierarchies, new connections that balanced the old noble families with the newly accepted wolves. It wasn't always peaceful. Some nobles resented the expansion. Some of the new wolves struggled with the transition from rogue life to pack structure. There were fights, disputes, challenges to authority. But slowly, carefully, the kingdom adapted. And Catalina learned what it meant to be a bridge queen. She couldn't solve every problem with power. Couldn't use her abilities to force perfect harmony. The temptation was there. She could theoretically reshape every bond in the kingdom, make everyone loyal and cooperative and unified. But that would be tyranny dressed as peace. Control disguised as harmony. So instead, she used her bridge sight to understand problems at their root. To see when conflicts arose from broken bonds that could be healed rather than pure malice. To identify wolves who were struggling not because they were evil, but because they were in the wrong place with the wrong pack. She became known as the queen who sees. Wolves who had problems with pack bonds, with mate connections, with family relationships. They came to her. And she helped when she could, refused when she couldn't, and always tried to heal rather than control. 5 years after the battle, on Esperanza's 22nd birthday, Catalina stood beside Alfonso at their daughter's coronation as heir apparent. Esperanza had grown into exactly the kind of leader the kingdom needed. Strong without being cruel, compassionate without being weak, strategic without being manipulative. She was ready to eventually rule, though Alfonso showed no signs of stepping down anytime soon. Luz stood beside her sister, recently acknowledged publicly as the king's daughter. The truth had come out gradually over the years, helped along by the fact that Luz's wolf looked remarkably like Alfonso's. The court had been shocked but ultimately accepting, especially when they learned that their beloved queen had been the one to give Beatriz a second chance. Beatriz herself had died peacefully 3 years prior, never knowing the truth of her past, having lived out her days as a devoted mother and gardener who'd been honored by the king's attention. It was a kind ending for someone who'd done terrible things but been given the chance to be better. As Esperanza swore her oaths and accepted the ceremonial blade that marked her as heir, Catalina felt Alfonso's presence through their bond. Not words, just a sense of contentment, of pride, of rightness. They'd built something good. Not perfect, but good. That night, alone in their chambers, Alfonso pulled Catalina close and said, "Do you ever regret it?" "Regret what?" "All of this. If you'd run that night instead of staying. If you'd refused to help when they dragged you to the birthing chamber. If you'd said no when I offered you a place in the family. You could have had a quiet life. Simple. Instead you became a bridge, a queen, a target for every ambitious noble and dark magic user in the kingdom." Catalina thought about it seriously. About the girl she'd been, broken and invisible in the laundry rooms. About all the pain and danger and impossible choices that had led her here. "No," she said finally. "I don't regret any of it. Because that broken girl in the laundry rooms wasn't living. She was just surviving. And I want more than survival. I want purpose, love, connection. All the things I thought I could never have because I was broken. You were never broken. Just unfinished. I know that now. But I needed to learn it. Needed to earn it. Needed to become someone who could be trusted with bridge power, not because I was perfect, but because I remembered what it felt like to be powerless." She turned in his arms, met his amber eyes. "I regret nothing. Not the pain. Not the danger. Not the impossible choices. Because all of it led me here. To you. To Esperanza and Luz. To becoming someone who can actually help heal the broken things in this kingdom." Alfonso kissed her forehead. "The texts say bridges live for centuries. That they age slowly, maintain their power long after normal wolves would fade. We could have 200 years together. Good. I'm going to need that long to fix all the problems you've accumulated in your kingdom before I arrived." He laughed. Then, more seriously, "Thank you, Catalina. For staying. For fighting. For becoming what you are. For saving my daughter when no one else could. For saving me when I didn't deserve it. For building this kingdom into something better than it was. We built it together. That's what partners do." They stood there in the darkness, two wolves who shouldn't have fit together. A king and a servant, an alpha and a broken wolf, power and powerlessness, but who'd found a way to bridge the gap between them. And in the nursery down the hall, their newest daughter, born 6 months ago with silver fur and eyes that saw into the void even as an infant, slept peacefully, watched over by Esperanza and Luz, who'd both insisted on guard duty. Another bridge. Born to a bridge mother and an alpha king. The texts had said such children would be unprecedented. Would have power that combined the best of both parents. Would reshape the world just by existing. Catalina had been terrified when she realized what her daughter would be. Terrified of the burden that child would carry, the danger she'd face, the expectations that would crush her. But then she remembered something important. She'd been born broken, cast out, told she had no value, no purpose, no future. And she'd become a queen. If she could do that, if a fractured wolf from the laundry rooms could become a bridge who reshaped kingdoms, then her daughter, born whole and strong and loved, could become anything she wanted. The world would try to use her, try to control her, try to make her into a weapon or a tool or a symbol. But she would have something Catalina hadn't: a mother who understood exactly what she was, and parents who would teach her that power without compassion was just another form of brokenness. 20 years later, when that daughter, named Jimena after the grandmother she'd never known, came into her own bridge powers and chose to use them not for conquest or control but for healing the rifts between the territories and creating connections that had been broken for centuries, Catalina watched with pride. She'd been born with a broken wolf. But the Lycan King's pup had called her Mama first. And from that single moment of unexpected connection, from that bond that shouldn't have been possible, from that tiny hand reaching for someone who wasn't supposed to matter, everything had changed. The broken girl had become a bridge. The bridge had become a queen. And the queen had raised daughters who would heal the world. It was more than enough. It was everything. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and tell me in the comments which moment affected you the most. Was it when Catalina first heard Mama? When she broke the curse? When she became a bridge? Or when she finally said yes to Alfonso? Drop your thoughts below. I read every single comment and your city so I can send you that hug I promised. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. And remember, sometimes the most broken things become the most beautiful when they're given the chance to heal.